Hello and welcome to the Recommerce podcast, the podcast where we talk all things Recommerce and circular businesses. Today we are talking about how retail businesses can actually jump into the world of Recommerce and how they can launch it and what kind of capabilities and analysis they should do in preparation to actually launching that. With me is Tuomo Laine, the CEO and co-founder of Twice Commerce. Welcome.
Thank you, Karri. It feels like I'm a regular here.
Let's start from why do you think this is an interesting topic at this time?
Yeah, sure. I think we're seeing increasing number of retailers looking to launch Recommerce initiatives. And I think how this is different from maybe 2 years ago is that the reason for launching these initiatives, there are the same reasons of being more sustainable, meeting consumer demand, but the economic situation of globally and the purchasing power of consumers is maybe a little bit taking a hit, and there's more uncertainty in the market. So we're seeing more and more reports of consumers needing to or wanting to buy a bit cheaper secondhand products. And I think this is just retailers reacting to that. And then especially this means that when they're looking at Recommerce, they're probably looking at ways of selling secondhand or selling resale. So maybe a bit less models like rentals, which are maybe heavier to set up, but rather they're trying to figure out how can they introduce more accessible price points for the catalogs that they have.
And I guess one sign that some retailers might actually see that kind of works into this area that they might not maybe connect the dots is that maybe more people are actually returning the products, so they are more critical of purchasing, especially like higher priced products. So there might be even more inventory available for Recommerce.
Definitely. So I think product returns in general is one of the main supply sources of Recommerce and resales. So whatever trends happen there directly affect the supply of Recommerce.
Let's now jump into the actual steps that a retailer should or is a good way to kind of approach this if they're interested in launching the Recommerce. So there is some capability analysis, goals, and then gap analysis, and then kind of making the decision. And then there are actually clear steps that they can kind of follow. So let's start from the first one, which is the capability analysis.
Yeah, and I want to add like that all of those steps, maybe compared to, again, 2 years ago, some of the retailers might feel pressure to go through the steps a bit faster, so they don't necessarily have a time for half a year discovery project, but rather they want to launch something the next quarter. So having a framework of what are the steps to go through and then having some ideas around that might be super beneficial for anyone needing to figure out Recommerce in 3 months rather than Recommerce in 18 months. But yeah, so like with most cases, any transformation or any new launch, starting with the first step is just analyzing your capabilities. And then understanding what are you good at and what's the current situation. For example, how much product returns you get, what kind of products you get. And in the context of Recommerce, I think there are capabilities that matter more that probably should take, let's say, 60 or 80% of your focus when doing the analysis. And then the 20% can be done maybe more superficially. So the idea is not to spend hundreds of thousands in consultants doing a sustainability analysis or capability analysis. The idea is just to look at few specific things and understanding, are you capable of executing already on top of what you have in place, or do you need to do some adjustments, or might you elect to actually outsource that capability in totality?
Okay. And in maybe concrete examples, what are the capabilities that they should be looking into?
They are a bit tied to what you're looking to launch, but in general, the first thing to look at is your kind of reverse logistics capabilities on how good are you at accepting product returns. So channel-wise, are you able to accept returns in store, so just someone actually coming to the store and returning the item themselves? Or do you have some systems in place where you're capable of accepting product returns via shipping? So kind of, for example, if you're an e-commerce operator, what kind of solutions you have in place in accepting product returns, and what is your process there? Do you offer refunds or partial like discounts or similar? So that's kind of the first one that I would look into, like how scalable is your reverse logistics operations, and what's the state of your product return inventory as that has been processed. So what I mean by that once your product return process is done, where do you see, like what's the data that you see? Do you have a individualized item sitting in some system or recorded somewhere where you know its condition and what it is and model and the reason why it was returned? Or have you just issued a refund and then you have a pile of unidentified items in some store corner or warehouse corner?
Okay, so reverse logistics, how is it handled now? Is it logged into some kind of inventory management system, and kind of are you maybe creating a digital twin out of those items that you have physically in some warehouse or some location where you gather all the product returns? And probably there's some operational capabilities also related to this process, and like what already happens to these items after they are returned.
So effectively looking at your existing product return process and looking at what systems were used and what's the state of the systems after the product has been returned. I think that would be the first step that I would analyze, because it's effectively helping you understand how well identified supply do you have for any, for example, resale initiative that you would have and you would launch. So if you look into the product return process, you quite quickly understand that is it good enough, or are there small parts where you need to adjust something? For example, all right, let's actually, instead of generalizing all of these product returns under some bulk SKU, let's figure out how might we just bridge the final last mile of that to a place where every item is uniquely serialized at the end of the product return process, so that anything that you decide to do with the items later is acting on the premise that, hey, I have a well-recorded list of all product returns, individualized in condition and price and all of the needed details, and potentially even unique product images.
Okay, so let's say you have done it, now you kind of know your capabilities, you understand the reverse logistics and your inventory tracking capabilities, and maybe how is the inspection grading process already happening. And then based on these, you jump into the next step, which is kind of setting the goal.
Yeah, well, actually before setting the goal, well, maybe it's a good point to touch upon that. Now you start to have already an intuitive idea of what your goal might be in terms of what kind of model you launch. So the goal might be that, okay, on a categorical level, we want to resell our product returns, or we want to start selling, getting kind of that second sale out of returned items. Now there are multiple ways of doing resales. There's of course the kind of sell it as it is way, where you have an outlet corner or secondhand corner, kind of a shop in shop setup if you're in a retail environment, or if you're in an online store, you might have like a separate secondhand online store in your website. And if you're kind of selling them as it is, you've just needed to, inspect and record the as it is condition. So that's kind of the easiest model to go through. But there are other resale models. There's the refurbishment model, where the premise would be that then you've not only recorded the condition, you might have improved it somehow. Maybe you packaged it, maybe you've repaired it a bit. And those again demand a bit more of capabilities. So if I can go back a bit to the capabilities part, so once you figure out your product return process and maybe your kind of capabilities of your inventory systems, there's one more thing that I would look at a category level is the know-how and capabilities of your employee base or partner base if the processes are run by partners. So effectively asking the question, are your store personnel or your warehouse personnel capable of inspecting and grading goods? And this is another area to look at because it's also connected to how wide of a catalog of products you have. So if you're super specialized, you only sell bikes, and all of your store personnel are bike enthusiasts, I would imagine that they're a bit more capable on identifying what kind of damage is like preventing a sale or not. But if you're selling anything from like, I don't know, keychains to boats, you're kind of a generalized retailer, there you might have a bit more challenges on whether an individual employee can handle product returns across categories. So that's a capability that I would also look at because that then educates you a bit on, are we going to launch resales on as a general value proposition, or are we going to focus on certain specific product categories where we know that our warehouse employees or store employees are capable of doing this inspection process. So that capability is an important one to look at also, that are we capable of inspecting and even potentially repairing these items internally or via partner. But yeah, so then we get to the goal on what's the goal. So based on the capability analysis, you can look at a list of models, and I think we can share in the podcast notes or kind of in the comments a example table of different models. But probably the easiest one is that what I mentioned, the secondhand, kind of sell it as it is, just record the condition and sell it as it is, or like an outlet corner. Then the next, which is a bit more challenging, is the one where you would refurbish the items. Again, that is based on the premise that either you or a partner can refurbish items to be in better condition. And then probably the final one in resales could be that, well, maybe you don't resell, you recycle them. So you don't resell them back to the consumer, but rather you resell them to an aggregator, on an aftermarket, someone looking to buy goods to be kind of turned into spare parts or so on. So kind of more on the recycling side of things rather than reselling. Or in terms of electronics, it might be reselling them to a, I don't know, phone refurbisher that aggregates phones across retailers. But so defining the goal is based on the capabilities.
And is there also scenario or where you see that maybe the goal could be already at this point some kind of servitized model, or is it most common or easiest way to start is probably just product returns into resales, but some might actually want to already jump into some servitized models here. So
definitely, I think so. Servitized model, as a recap, meaning rentals or, for example, subscriptions. I think servitized models are easier to launch for those retailers or merchants that already have those capabilities in the repair side of things. Maybe they offer maintenance and repair already as a service, so they will start utilizing that capability internally in order to have the inspection and repair process in between rentals, for example. This is probably more common with more specialized stores or retailers that have a maybe narrower but deeper catalog and know-how in terms of product categories. So maybe the main thing would be that if you haven't done any re-commerce, you haven't done any resales, or you haven't done any repair or rentals, you don't probably want to boil the ocean and try to do everything at once, but rather you need to select one of the models to start with that hopefully aligns as well as it can with your capabilities. There's a high likelihood that your capabilities are most aligned with selling product returns as individualized items in store and online with the help of some software.
okay, so now you know your capabilities, and based on those, now you have some kind of a goal. And then the next step is probably kind of merge these into and analyze if there is any gaps or something that need to be filled or resolved before actually moving on.
Definitely. So then we're at the place where, well, dependent on your ambition level, you've defined what you want the reality to be, and then you've done your analysis of what can be done right now. And then most likely you have some gaps in some of the capabilities. Maybe you're lacking a system that can handle serialized or individualized inventory management, which prevents you from, in a scalable way, selling items in store, in a shop-in-shop, or online, or both at the same time, with unique product images and pricing and so on. So then it's up to you to then define how do you bridge the gap. Kind of the standard classic one is that either you build or you buy. So either you build the solution yourself or you go and buy it from the market. In terms of software, we at Ecommerce would say that probably better to buy. There's us and a couple of other players in the market that are helping retailers to bridge the gap in an efficient way where you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands or even millions in software development building a system that you're not yet fully committed to. You just want to launch, for example, a test shop in one store. So that's where companies like Ecommerce help you a lot. So you don't have to front load a lot of investments in software. Where I think it gets more fuzzy is then if you have gaps in your operational capabilities. So for example, the inspection process. So if your store employees can't yet do it, do you build, so do you invest in their capability of knowing the products better? Or do you have some kind of a partner that you kind of direct all of your product returns to a partner warehouse that handles all of that and kind of gives you as a feedback the information of the grading and valuation of items, and maybe takes those product images that you can then use in your own online store, maybe with a system like Ecommerce. There, I think it's super case by case, because if you think about it, investing effort in your own employees knowing some product categories better is something that retailers anyhow usually would do. You have product category leaders, you have team coaches, product coaches that coach people around, hey, how to sell this product, how to kind of showcase this product in the best way to your customers. You have like Apple experts and so on. So there, whether it makes sense to have a partner and buy the service or invest in your own store employee capabilities, it's more case by case. I would probably try to do a bit of both. So for a specialized store, I would say invest in your store employee know-how, because that's probably the reason why customers come to you. For a more general purpose merchant, maybe the partner model makes sense for some product categories, and then deeper knowledge and investing in employee knowledge in some key areas makes sense.
Okay, so the main categories to look for in the gaps are basically tech, data, operations, and people.
Yeah, I think that would summarize all of that quite well. In tech, you can also split it into like inventory and catalog management, which are the important things, like what do you actually have, the inventory side of things, how are you selling them forward, the catalog side of things, and then you have sales channels and maybe payments. So there's a question like, okay, so I now have this serialized, individualized inventory. I now have a catalog that is capable of showcasing all of my items in a nice way, in a resale catalog friendly way. Now, do you have a sales channel where you can showcase it? Do you have a shop-in-shop environment where employees can then read those items in, or the online store, and then maybe the payment side of things? If you would have gone to, for example, rentals, you might need things like deposit handling and all of these. So, but it all, in my thinking, falls under the category of tech and operations.
Ecommerce probably has a pretty nice all-in-one solution for this.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we are building, that we help you in whatever the model is. We help you off the ground and scale quite far. We have retailers that have then like 50 or even closer to 150 retail locations that are running their store operations on top of us with hundreds and thousands of employees using the system in various touch points. And then we integrate with other players like Wix, or then via APIs you can connect us pretty much to anything. Our idea and thinking is that when you launch into Recommerce, you probably don't want to go knees deep in one model and then have a vertical specific SaaS model that is only fitting one model. Because at the end of the day, your business idea should be that you're capable of selling items more than once, twice, or more. And then you have various different models to choose from that fit your current capabilities or future capabilities. So you probably want some horizontal capabilities in terms of software that help you do the key things super well. So tracking that individualized inventory, having a catalog that is friendly for e-commerce, and then being able to bridge that gap to your existing sales channels. I think those are the key things, and that's where we've done a lot of effort in making that easy. And regarding the people capabilities, that's the reason why we put a lot of effort in trying to figure out as intuitive UX as possible. So from our perspective, it scales for that entrepreneur who's just launching their store. So it's an intuitive software that doesn't overwhelm you. But the same capability then scales to large enterprises and retailers whose challenge is that they have a lot of employees and a lot of turnover with employees. So they can't be there constantly training every employee with some kind of a system specialist. The software should be as simple that a average employee can run with it if they're kind of put it in front of that system for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, that they can get forward without any training.
Sounds good. Okay, so now we have capabilities, we have some kind of a goal in mind, and now we know the gaps that we want to fill to actually achieve that goal. And then it's probably time to make some decision based on these. And I guess here, maybe the angle could be that you want to maybe start small and then move or scale if it actually starts working, and you might actually identify new gaps.
Yeah, so for decision making, I would champion a kind of a stage gate model, meaning that you don't try to make a long-term decision immediately, but rather you package your decision making into phases and so stages, and then you have some gates where you've defined success criteria for those gates to say that whether we go forward with this setup, whether we adjust, or whether we kill the initiative totally. So usually what I've seen to be the most actionable way forward that gets results and data in fastest, which often means that it has the highest likelihood of success compared to some like long project with a lot of work that is hidden for months or years before launch. The best model is where you have a closed loop kind of a proof of concept launch. So if you're a multi-store retailer, you kind of, or even a few stores, you select just one to start with. And you map your kind of capabilities and process around that, because it's maybe easier to bridge a gap in one location. It might, in some cases, be just the fact that there's one employee that can champion this whole process and kind of act as the proto person that is capable of like who you want to model your scaling after. So in one store location, it's easier to introduce maybe one new system if needed. It's easier to fiddle with processes and then run everything else as it is. It can be a physical store, or then if you want to do some tests online, you can have either a completely separate, independent, standalone online store, kind of fully taken away from your main purchasing experience. I think that's a nice way when you start. So in your website navigation, you might have like a resales navigation link that kind of practically opens even new tab that is built around a subdomain like resales.retailer.com. And the idea there being that you fully separate this purchase experience so that you can kind of look at the analytics and all of that independently. and then your mainstream operation can continue without too much noise happening from this proof of concept. So I think that would be the model. So you figure out a closed loop way where this launch doesn't too much bother the mainstream operation, whether it's warehousing or software layer or the in-store operations. And then the hard part is defining what does success look like. So, but that usually comes already with the key idea that, okay, we launched into this thing due to wanting to get more revenue recovery for our product returns, wanting to be more sustainable, and wanting to build up brand loyalty and customer loyalty in the Recommerce space, for example. So then you figure out how do you measure those, and then you set the gate that, okay, we run this closed loop experiment for 2, 3, 6 months. This is what success looks like. And then we go to the next stage, which often is just either scaling store locations or scaling product categories. And then maybe this is a process that often takes then anything from 3 to like even 24 months, where you then keep adding categories or locations, or in some cases models, if you are simultaneously sourcing or building, for example, capabilities in the refurbishment side of things that, okay, now we're capable of refurbishing items with the help of a new partner. Great, let's introduce not only secondhand sales, let's introduce refurbished items to our catalog.
And I can also imagine that, let's say you run this type of pilot program and there is some kind of owner for this project and they are kind of working in this one location, and the experience and the knowledge they actually gather might be something that they are, I know that Twice, for example, has some customers that are doing like a centralized operations for the refurbishment and handling all the reverse logistics and all of that. So like this one person can actually learn a lot and then maybe not scale it by going to the next store, but they can actually decide that they are going to have these stores as more like service locations and then have like one centralized place, and that could be the next like goal for that person to get it up and running, which might actually help scaling a lot faster if it's successful.
Definitely. So if you're able to centralize, especially the like logistics and the physical operations into one place, that helps a lot. So then you can have in a warehouse, you can dedicate, for example, just a physical space for inspecting and refurbishing. It just makes things maybe a lot easier. There's a employee at our company that used to say that the process of scaling is about standardizing, automating, delegating, and elevating. So I think these champions that are leading these initiatives, after they've done the first analysis and they start to run the pilots, they are kind of continuously, their job is to figure out, okay, which things do I feel that I can start to standardize? Which things can I automate? That's usually with the help of software, that you start to create rules in the software. So in Twice, for example, you start to kind of define in your account settings some order fulfillment rules or some kind of generalized approaches for certain kind of models. And then the delegation part is that you start to involve, of course, more people, and then you delegate either on a like same level that you have a colleague that is kind of helping you manage the bandwidth, or maybe you have store managers that you can start inviting to the systems with specific roles and so on and so on. And then the elevation is usually the most fun part, where you have a kind of nice standardized process that is automated in an enough level that you've been able to delegate it to other people, and then you just start providing support for various teams and individuals in how can they make even more out of the process, or elevating it in terms of scaling the catalog or the number of service locations.
Okay, now I think we run through all the main steps up to the decision making, and maybe we want to go through like a simple example, like what is probably the most common for a retailer and what kind of model they should probably test out with first.
I think the simplest model I would feel confident saying 90% of retailers is to launch secondhand sales with like as it is condition. And again, what I mean by that, in kind of lacking better words, is that you have a way of accepting product returns either in store or online or both. And once you get them, you're capable of inspecting their condition, giving them a unique price point based on that, and hopefully being able to take item-specific product images, because it just makes your online sales a lot easier if every unique item has its own product images. And then you're in a place where you have a catalog full of resale items that you can host online and in store, and then it's up to you whether you do click and collect or pure e-com or mixture of those. But that would be the easiest way to, I think, go into the resale side of things. And then based on that, you'll start to learn a lot about the system needs and all of that before having to do a lot of heavy lifting operationally.
And if you have multiple locations, probably starting this at one or maybe two or but limited number of locations.
I would start in one location. Probably you can, even if you are truly a multi-store operator, I would imagine that in some of your store locations you have a little bit of a variety between the items that you sell. If you're in the countryside, you have different kind of items, and if you're in the city urban center, you have different kind of items. So I would do a little bit of an analysis on like in which of the locations we tend to have product returns that are more resellable. So reselling semi-durable goods is a bit harder sometimes than maybe if you get like product returns like I don't know, like a trailer. Maybe that's easier to be resold. There's an easier aftermarket for that than a coffee machine. I don't know. This is the area where I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I would maybe select the location based on that.
Okay, so now we have the steps and maybe the most common example for retailers, and maybe at the end we want to still go through some kind of like action items. So if somebody's listening and they're like, I wanna go for it, and kind of like have a step-by-step actions and how to actually start this process.
Yeah, I think it's about like deciding on your pilot or proof of concept approach. So how many stores, what channels, what product categories, and what model. Decide that, and then immediately or at the same time source some tech partners. It's highly likely that you need a tech partner to help you with that individualization and the catalog building of resales. So go out there, I would say at minimum send us a message, and we'll be able to help you forward from there. And after that, it's a lot about kind of, well, the next steps is about just defining those, what does success look like? Short term and long term. Short term, just do we get it up and running in a few weeks, in the best case. What kind of data do you need to accumulate to evaluate success, and you can report it forward. And then I think mid to long term, you need to critically look at your own capabilities and whatever partners you elected to kind of get things off the ground. That how good are they with data, how good are they at automation and usability. And nowadays I would say AI nativeness, like are these systems that can be elevated with AI and various other capabilities that your organization likely is starting to utilize across the board. So that would be then the next phase. But first, to get off the ground, decide on the proof of concept level, just make one decision, and then reach out to tech partners, minimum twice commerce, and then after that, it's about figuring out what does success look like.
Okay, I think that's a really nice checklist or action item for anybody to get started with. Maybe as a final note, do you have some kind of tips or something that some of our existing customers have kind of faced and the questions they might have?
My main tip would be that don't stress too much about, for example, having perfect data or similar already available when reaching out to partners. Like, And what I mean, there can be a lot of time wasted just by you saying as a retailer that, okay, I'll do some internal job, spending 3 weeks trying to gather perfect data. Often good tech partners is, for them, it's enough that you send a sample CSV of your inventory and sample maybe of your catalog. It's just something for them to start like practically setting up the environment for you. For us, if we get your inventory Excel and maybe that one store location that you're starting the pilot, if you get even the opening hours of that and the address, we can have something real and live with no cost for you to evaluate with your team in matter of hours or days. So rather than front loading a lot of data honing, just send something over and then see what the partners can do with it. I'd consider it maybe a red flag if the tech partner is saying that they need months to fiddle with your systems to be able to be up and running. So just that would be my tip, that just send something over and see what the partners can do with it so that you can have something actually like a demo environment to play with rather than looking at slides or listening to sales pitches.
Okay, that's a really good tip, and I guess the easiest way to start for anybody is just to maybe contact and have a conversation with you as you have worked with a lot of retailers in this space and have a lot of stuff to share and just talk through.
Yeah, definitely. Just send an email or reach out in LinkedIn. I think those are the easiest way to get our attention.
Nice. But hey, that's it for this time. I hope you found it very valuable and a lot of good insights and maybe got some encouragement to actually get it up and running. But hey, thank you a lot, Tuomo.
Thanks, Karri.